Hello, and welcome to another episode of the DevLab podcast brought to you by HackerJob. Today, we're joined by three fantastic guests from BAE Systems. In this episode, you're going to find out a lot more about who they are and what they do in their current roles. We're going to explore their different paths into technology, what their roles look like today, and how they're building and supporting systems people rely on in everyday life. We'll also discuss perspectives on inclusion, AI, and how the industry is evolving. So let's get into it. So firstly, all of you, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here.
Great. As I said, we're going to start by getting a bit of a flavour of who you are and what you do. Johanna, let's start with you. You've all kind of taken very different paths into technology. Could you walk us through your journey and what led you into the role you're in today?
Yeah, no, and it's true. There's many different people who come from a range of different backgrounds. Very few people come directly into tech and stay in tech all of their life. So it's really looking at different skill sets and how you get to where you are. So I'm a big advocate for the squiggly careers, and mostly because my career was squiggly indeed as well. So when I was 14, 15, my biggest aspiration was to be a primatologist and to work in the rainforests of Africa with gorillas and chimpanzees. So that led me into a scientific career where I remained as an academic and trained up to the PhD level. So I am a scientist by training, a comparative psychologist, in many respects from the research angle, but used those skills, those quantitative skills from statistics and understanding data management to move into a data landscape, into the civil service, and then onwards through the immersion of data and AI and analytics into to mainstream society, into the transformation world, and the role that I have now as the Group Chief Data Officer for BAE Systems.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we're going to really delve into, what that current role means and what your focus is and priorities are on a day-to-day as we get into it. But before we do, Davinder, let's hear from you. Why don't you talk us through your journey?
Yeah, it's interesting how Johanna says that's the tradition, very rarely it's done and all of that. But you are right. I'm probably one of the very few that did do the computing at GCSE because I saw traffic light system when I was programming this traffic light system board at GCSE level. My uncle did, like you, my uncle at 14 gave me a computer as well. So just those two things got me sparked my interest and curiosity into how do these traffic lights work, and I can control these traffic lights. And then when I was given the computer, it was, what do I do with it? How do I use it? And then instead of panicking, I went, well, I'm going to figure out how to use this. I'm going to learn how to use this because it's quite interesting. So yeah, that's what got me into it.
Fantastic. Just to I guess delve into that journey a little bit further. What's your current role today, and how did you actually land the role that you're doing today? Is it something that you've moved from one vertical to another? Yeah, if you could just touch on that as well, that'd be great, Davinder.
Yeah, well, because from the GCSE, I did the BTEC National Diploma for Computer Studies. Instead of doing A levels, I did purely computing for those 2 years. I thought A levels, I'd have to choose other subjects, which I'm not interested in.
Good.
So I knew the national diploma would be completely 2 years of computers. And then after that, a 4-year computer science degree. So Johanna, this is it. I'm one of the very few that have actually done that.
And done it really well.
And yeah, and so that was a good 30 odd years ago. So I graduated in 1994 and have been doing that ever since. So getting into, it's all been government projects, all the way, police projects, government projects, for a long time. And then when I wanted to leave that previous company, BAE are obviously government projects. So it was an easy choice to come to BAE.
And I think the similarity between Davinder and myself that you'll see come through with Emma as well is the passion. So we do what we love. Isn't that the essence of it?
Yeah, I think that word is mentioned a lot. Passion.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I agree. Again, I can't wait to find out more. Emma, why don't you walk us through? Because again, you've got a very unique journey, and again, give us a different perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting going from the doing what you love thing, because that's not how I started my IT career at all.
So my background is in sports coaching and development, and that's what I love doing. I love the coaching and the being around the people. But when I graduated, the Olympics had just finished and all of the sport funding had got removed. There was no chance of being a PE teacher because that's what everyone else then decided to do. So I thought, I need to get myself a job and earn some money. So I actually ended up in a call centre, working on the first line, answering the phones, fixing problems as they came through, and realised that I really didn't enjoy being on the phone all day, every day. And just kind of progressed from there. Found myself in a leadership position because they didn't have to answer the phones, and found that I really enjoyed the people side of it. That people bit kind of came back into it once more. And I worked my way up looking after all of the availability and capacity side from an EMEA perspective for that company, and then moved over to BAE where I had an opportunity to focus more on services again, but looking more from a project base and how we pull that together. And it's really interesting going from the company I was working for, because they were, again, a government account based company, moving into another one. So there was similarity, but also very different at the same time in what we do build and what we do.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much. And again, just to really touch on that, I think, this should be an incredibly inspiring episode for anyone out there listening in that's thinking about, maybe making that change and moving from one role or one vertical or one focus to another, because I think all of you show that there are different routes in. And just because you didn't necessarily take that traditional route doesn't mean you can't make that decision later down the line. And actually, I'm sure, and this is something I'm sure we'll touch on when we really delve into your roles, having those different perspectives and bringing those different skill sets to the table then lead to a richer experience for everyone in the team, and those kind of varied skill sets, really create a more well-rounded and balanced team overall. Emma, let's stay with you. Why don't you talk us through, your day-to-day role, like where do you spend most of your time, what's your main focus, and yeah, maybe touch on some of that about, those skills that you bring from those previous roles and how they help you in your day-to-day.
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a split role in my day-to-day job. So 80% of my time, I'm a business relationship manager, which effectively means I drink an awful lot of tea because I speak to a lot of people, and that definitely helps the conversation flow. But I'd probably describe that part of my role as a facilitator, an integrator, and someone who connects people. I spend a lot of time with the business, really understanding what they want to achieve, how they want to achieve that, what that means from an IT perspective, and how we can support that to help make those things happen. But also looking at what issues they do have and how we can fix them, but also then make sure that they don't happen again, and really kind of connect all of the different parts of IT into the program so they can get to where they want to go. And it's really fascinating because no 2 days are the same. We are all driving kind of towards that common goal. There's always a different fire and always something else that crops up to look after. So it is really interesting. You kind of can't get bored around that space. But my other part of the role, my 20%, I work with one of our employee resource groups. So our LGBT network is called OutLink. And we're a group of voluntary employees who get a bit of in real time to kind of help challenge the business in a healthy way and drive us to be more inclusive and support our employees and make sure we are doing the right thing so everybody feels safe and has their own space within the business.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And we're definitely going to touch on that later on. Really interested to get more insight into that and really understand that wider culture at BAE and how inclusivity is support within the business. Just kind of staying with your kind of day-to-day first before we move on. Really, it sounds like, you're very much the intersection between technology and the business, almost a conduit, a translator. In your opinion, what does good translation actually look like in practice?
Good translation is being a little bit ahead of the game, I think, because the fires occur when we don't know something's coming. So planning is key. Like we really need to get that nailed down. And it's not easy because you do everyone really focuses on what do we need to achieve in the short term to make this happen. We look at the next steps, and taking that step back to kind of look at the bigger vision, the bigger place of where we're going is actually quite difficult. And it takes a lot of navigation and a lot of conversations to kind of draw that out from the business so we can really understand that. So good as having that foresight. We're never going to get it 100%. There will always be things that crop up. Nothing ever runs 100% to plan because there are so many moving parts in the business. There's always going to be something that does conflict somewhere.
And being able to react in the right way is also what good looks like. So when something does go wrong, can we get the right people to the right problem at the right time so that it doesn't become a bigger issue than what it really is? And we can then look to put something in place, make sure that doesn't happen again, hopefully, and look to see how we integrate that into the plan moving forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Awesome. So no, thank you so much for some really great insight into your role there, Emma, and going to give the audience a real flavour of what you do. To help give that context for the rest of the pod. Anna, let's come to you next. So same question. How would you describe your role today? Where do you spend most of your time? And also maybe if you could touch on, where do those past lives experiences really help you in your role today?
Yeah. So I'm the first Group Chief Data Officer for BAE Systems. I've held the post for just under 3 years. And, it was my great honour to come in and to fly the flag for data analytics and AI for the organisation. And a job that I absolutely love. It's a job that's incredibly challenging because the technology changes are coming so quickly upon us, AI, all the capability. It's challenging because the organisation is growing so quickly. So our own internal transformations and ensuring that we've got the elements of data embedded in them is absolutely critical. If we want to use AI, if we want to drive productivity, if we want to deliver those platforms, our submarines, our ships, and our planes on time and schedule, so those elements as well. It's a job where no 2 days are ever the same. So I focus on the transformation programs for the organisation, my own delivery of programs from the data analytics and AI space, and our functional changes from a digital data and cyber perspective as well. But what does that look like in an organisation of 111,000 people on a global scale? Really, it has a very diverse portfolio. So I'll give you some highlights from so far in 2026. I've been supporting the organisation with the World Defence Show in Saudi and presenting on stage with colleagues from Lockheed Martin on AI capabilities and development of those areas. I've been working with our HR transformation programme on our global career frameworks and how we get the right framework for data analytics and AI colleagues into the organisation. Last night, I was with colleagues from across defence and talking about some of the challenges that are coming through and that wider defence landscape as the changing geopolitical landscape changes. I work closely with partners outside on some of the developments and for technology. I'm working with our naval ships and submarines business on the digitalization of the operational elements of what we do, so how we build the platforms. Between that, there are commonalities. There are commonalities in the demand for AI, the new capability that's needed, the flow of information at different security levels across different domains, the demand for productivity gains, to understand better how we drive forwards with efficiency and effectiveness, how we manage a changing workforce. So the UK is seeing a downturn in the workforce at the moment, with people going to retirement, and how do we embrace digitalisation of our younger colleagues who are coming in as graduates or on one of our many apprenticeship programmes. So it's always something interesting happening. It's never the same.
Fantastic. Yeah, really, really thorough summary. And again, such a varied role, which I think really highlights just the almost the scale of the projects being worked on at BAE Systems. And again, for anyone out there listening in, I think really highlights, all of the different interesting technical challenges and areas that you could be focusing on if you were to join an organization like BAE Systems. I want to focus in on one particular, element of what you just detailed there. Part of your role is on creating or helping to build a data fluent organization. What does that actually look like? And I suppose, why does that matter?
Yeah, so it will matter immensely in terms of how we drive the organisation forwards. It's about the management of our information. So if we go back to the basics, the information, the data, don't care which these days because I can analyse all of it. The data that we hold for the organisation is the asset of the organisation. It belongs to the organisation and it is there to drive the organisation forwards. So on that basic premise, it's a case of how do we use that information best from our business operations perspective to really understand how the business is doing, how it's performing, how we use that data when something's gone wrong to understand and diagnose the problem and put it right. How do we ensure that the processes are correct in our organisation to drive us forwards faster? And inevitably, in a operation of this size and scale, there is always something that's not quite as you expect, whether that be global supply chain changes, changes in government, changes in delivery schedules. So really being able to, no matter where you are in the business, understand your role in terms of the information that comes into and off our systems and how that drives the organisation forwards is really, really important. And some of that is being able to go into one of our systems and understand the information that's in there. Maybe you're a finance colleague. Others, it's about those who are on the shipyards, those who are on the manufacturing floor, understanding that the information they put into the system to say that they need more piping or that the job's complete is important for the rest of us to understand where we are in terms of our deliveries and our going forwards. So it really is about the information that drives the business from that context. There are other elements as well. So if we look at some of our capabilities, we're moving more and more into autonomous elements. So we have autonomous boats, we have the drone swarms, we're looking at the larger autonomous vehicles as well. We have the tanks. It's all data. It's all data. And again, in the defence landscape, we're looking at how we enable autonomous capability in a normal scenario, but also what we call on the edge. So when it's not connected to anything electronic, so that it can go about its missions in a combat region without any interference. So again, really, really interesting work. And then, finally, some of the bigger pieces of work that we're doing now are with regard to our space capability. So we're looking at what we call multi-domain integration. So we have systems upon systems upon systems of information that go into some of our military combat capabilities. And the challenge there is preparing our military colleagues to be able to understand large flows of information that are coming into them very, very quickly at speed and help them to be able to make a decision in a stressful and critical situation. So if you think about if you're on a naval ship, you've got all of your sensor information coming in, all of your geographical information coming in. You may now have data coming in from planes above you, from submarines below you, from wider elements, but also you can start to get your satellite data in there as well. So you've got a global perspective. And so a lot of this is about how do you think about the human brain, going back to Emma's point on the business element, or thinking about the person, the user experience. How do you give them the experience to be able to make decisions when actually the flow of information, the amount of AI that's coming into that technology is immense. It could be, to get it wrong, completely overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, really highlights that, the exciting nature of the challenges you're facing. And I couldn't agree more. These days, an organization is often as good as its handle on the data, powering the systems. And so, incredibly important work that you're undertaking there. Thank you so much. Davinder, I've been waiting very patiently, but very excited to hear from you too. How would you describe your role today? Where do you spend most of your time?
Most of my time is, actually it's 50-50. It's communicating with my colleagues and doing the coding. The architects have they've outlined the design of what needs to be done, and ultimately they're separated into functionalities. So we all work on a bit of functionality. We call them stories. And individually, you take each bit of functionality on, you have to analyze it with the BA yourself, decide how you're going to code it, how you're going to test it. And all of that requires a lot of interaction with your colleagues and talking to people, because ultimately this functionality is solving a human condition or a human thing, isn't it? Especially at the moment with the border control stuff that we're doing, we're trying to think of how best, and that's what Johanna was just saying, the overwhelming information. So how do we present and how do I present and analyze this data and present it to the border control officer in a way that you can quickly make a snap decision whether they want to stop this person or not? And we have to think about enabling them. How are we going to do that? And obviously, I get to write the actual code behind it as well. But then I also see my front end colleagues that are actually puts the data that I produce on the screen. Yeah, how it all fits together.
Fantastic. Look, and I'm pleased you mentioned coding there, because, you know, I think one thing that really shone through when we were doing our prep for this call is just your real love of the craft and the hands-on engineering. What do you think has kept you there, hands-on, rather than kind of making some of those more traditional moves into leadership and management?
Yeah, but this is it, because if you have a passion, we're going to use that word again, passion for problem solving, just problem solving and using logic. If you're like kind of interested in that, that's what coding is all about. I didn't want. I think I want to just stay in that area. I didn't want to go too out of that, because in a way, I don't want to look after people. That's not something I want to do. I want to look after the tech. I want to do the tech. I don't want to look after people as I see it. But having said that, you have to guide and support all your colleagues around you constantly and support them. So that's absolutely fine. You're not actually like managing them or looking after them, but you are still guiding and supporting them, especially some of the junior ones as well. So I guess it's just the official role of going into some managing roles is what kind of like scares me, because I'll be taken away from the actual coding and the problem logic, which is where the passion is. I've heard from people that have gone into leadership roles, tech lead roles, it's supposed to be 50% coding and 50% tech leading, but I've noticed it's 90% tech leading, the leading they're doing very little coding. So that's where it keeps me, and this is where I'm going to stay, because if that's where I'm going to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've already discussed that, you know, there's so much benefit in having people come in from different backgrounds and take different journeys. And it's actually the same within an organization, right? As much as it's important to have leaders and people who aspire in that way, it's also very important to have people like yourself that, you know, just really want to stay close to the code and keep building things and keep, yeah, delivering in value, which brings us on really nicely to our next question, which is, look, a lot of your work, and Davinder, I'd like to stay with you on this one, and then we'll open it up to the wider group. A lot of your work underpins real world systems, you know, things that people rely on every day without even realizing. How do you think about the impact of what you're building on, you know, users or the wider world?
Well, this one's an easy one for me, because I know that what I'm doing is vital in security aspects. You know, it's absolutely so important. I mean, for security, I mean, and it makes me proud, knowing that when people are scanning their passport coming into the country, scanning my code, basically the code that I wrote. I mean, you can't get much better than that, can you, really? But knowing that's what you're going to be writing and coding for, well, it's just amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, phenomenal impact. Yeah, Johanna or Emma, if you want to jump in on how do you think about the impact of what you're building to build on what Davinder said there?
Emma, do you want to go?
Sure. I think it's a really interesting one, and it actually came up in conversation yesterday at a workshop we're at, where we were roadmapping the future for the submarines business and what we need from an IT perspective. And part of the conversation came up in that, are we actually entering a period of time where generations don't know anyone who's directly impacted by the past, and where we've needed the national endeavour to kind of protect us? And does everyone really understand the impact of what we're doing and what that actually means, and what does that mean for our society? And it just kind of makes you think about what we do and who we're actually helping as we go along and on our day-to-day jobs. And I think for me, there's an element of pride that comes with it. Like, I think we all should be a bit proud of what we do. We are helping where we're putting things in place that kind of protect our friends, our family, our country, and hopefully take us into a better place, or make sure we don't end up in a place that we don't want to be, realistically. And I think most people out there know the story of the janitor from NASA who said that, I put a man on the moon. And people kind of came back and said, well, no, you don't, you clean toilets. And actually that's what we all do. No matter what little part we have to play, we're actually part of a bigger journey. And that's so, so important, because we couldn't get to where we're going if we don't have every little person as part of that bigger wheel.
Absolutely. Yeah, very well said. Joanna?
Yeah, no, similarly, that what sticks in my mind from a BAE Systems point of view is we protect those who protect us. And we have, thousands of service personnel and their families who are dependent upon a lot of the work that we do, whether that's services, whether it's in the UK or beyond. And, in a world of growing sort of geopolitical tension. My sister is a major in the UK Army, the British Army, and she tells a story. Only last year she was out on exercise with the troops in Eastern Europe, and they were practicing wearing gas masks in case they have to retreat from Russian troops on the ground at some point. So they're in the middle of this exercise. It's torrid. Wearing a gas mask and exerting yourself is not fun. So they're practicing all of these skills. It's not a nice environment. They're having to go through all of those elements. She said every morning her routine was she had to get out of her cot. Remember, they're sleeping in cots, hence. She had to get out of her cot and do some basic checks. And one of the elements that she had to do was go and get a piece of equipment out to check the satellite capabilities and to check what was going on. And it was a BAE Systems piece of equipment. So every morning she would get up, go to the back of one of the lorries, and in this great big case strapped across the top said BAE Systems sort of label. And every day she would put her hand on that case, pull it forwards and see the BAE Systems. And she says she felt the comfort of that, not because I worked for them. Excuse me. But because she knew that reliably every day she would turn that kit on and that kit would work and that kit would do its job. And that might not be the same as the gas masks fitting appropriately or the boots rubbing on her feet or the rest of it, or the BAE Systems equipment works. And so having that trust with people who are putting themselves on the front line, particularly those that we love and care for, is something that drives us all forwards. And that strap line, we protect those who protect us, is something that you'll find that's inherent in the psyche of all BAE Systems employees.
Absolutely. Yeah, really well said. I think from all of you, again, that passion for the work that you're doing, the impact that you have just really sings out in all of your answers. So again, I've kind of touched on it a few times, but anyone out there listening in, not only is this an opportunity to work with some, let's face it, some pretty cool tech, some pretty interesting projects, but also it's the opportunity to have a real world impact on the security of all of us. And I'm going to come to you next on this one, because I think it does kind of fit quite nicely within your your kind of remit and responsibilities. There is a bit of a theme that when technology works, nobody notices, but when it breaks, everybody does. How do you build teams, work with teams, foster a culture that kind of thrives in that sort of unsung hero environment, let's call it?
Yeah, it can be quite difficult. It can be a little bit thankless at times, is sometimes how it feels. But I think one thing that we're definitely getting better at doing is actually giving recognition within our teams, within our function, because you don't always get that from the wider business or that external environment. So actually taking the time just to thank someone for going out a little bit more than they would just to help you get something over the line or help them pull together a report that you need for a customer is really important. And I think we sometimes forget to do that ourselves and then expect it from others at the same time. I think it's also good to look at how we reduce the issues, right? We're going to get more and more complaints if we don't actually fix some of the inherent things there in the first place. And actually communicating that out to show that we are listening, like we are hearing what people are saying. It goes a long way for them to see that, yes, not everything's perfect, but we're actually striving to make that a bit better. So a piece of advice that someone gave me when I first joined BAE Systems was to find myself a work hobby, because the day job might not be the most amazing thing 100% of the time, but actually if you've got something that you're really passionate about, there's always going to be a little bit of work that you're really excited to do. And I kind of took that on board, and my work hobby, the thing that I've started really getting into and really enjoying is looking at AI and ethics and how bringing AI into the business, are we doing the right thing? And are we doing it in the right way? And I think it's really interesting from a defense sector perspective, especially as we're going into a world where AI is becoming more and more pronounced and it's including everything. What does that mean for these autonomous decision making, and where does that leave us as a company? Are we making the right decisions in that space? So it is a really interesting space to look into. And yeah, it helps knowing that at some point every week I'm going to go and do a little bit on that and learn a little bit more and get involved in some really exciting conversations. And you can, when you have that little hobby, you can see the passion in people, because everyone's got that little something that makes them tick. And it's really nice to see that when everyone kind of finds that little interest as well.
On the same thing there about when things break, everything breaks. I mean, in my world, if we know that things going to break, the functionality will break, things will break, you will get errors. But from my point of view, it's like keeping calm about it. especially when some of the junior people, things break for them. I try and guide them to say, like, first thing, don't panic because things will always break. Look at actually the error that's happened on your screen. Just read it bit by bit. Don't, because sometimes they'll say, "Oh, it's an error. It's gone broken. It's gone wrong. Forget it. It's all wrong." And then, like, can you fix it? I'm thinking, well, look at it, read it. What does it actually say? Read it line by line. Try and solve it line by line. It's like a mystery trail that you're following to try and solve it. So, like, it's almost like a game for me.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to solve it instead of going, "Oh, it's broken," panic. So that's at the coding level of when things break, just to keep calm about it.
Absolutely. Keep calm, carry on. And yeah, Johanna, it'd be great to hear from you as well. How do you kind of build that culture that's, okay with this?
It's really interesting because we've got quite an interesting culture. So looking at organizational culture is something that I've studied over the past few years because it's really interesting in how it drives how the organization works. So I was looking at a fast food organization recently from a personal perspective, but looking at the data flow. And what's really interesting is that in this fast food franchise, which is global, you find that there's a really great user interface for all of the systems that their internal colleagues have to use because it's a very diverse workforce that may not be digitally orientated in a native way. And actually everything is very, very process driven and just rolled out against that process, mandated, right? Nothing can go wrong from onboarding your people to the jobs that you have to do during the day to the supply chain elements to get the food into each shop because it is so automated, it is so data driven, right? Look at this thinking, oh, this is super exciting. Organizations that have got a business model where they're bringing in diverse workforces that may be transient, that may change regularly, have that model. They use the technology and they lean on it a lot and mandate into it. BAE Systems is slightly different, and I've worked in several government departments that are the same in that we're an engineering company. We hire some of the brightest freaking people in the country and beyond, in different countries, and we hire them because they are very skilled, very technical, very capable, and that drives a different organizational culture, and that's interesting as well because what it means is that actually nothing ever fundamentally breaks. There will be a whole bunch of people who will know that if some error message comes up, they're going to go and message Davinder and they're going to get it fixed. It's not going to break because they know that Davinder can fix it and Davinder will fix it because Davinder's brilliant. And there's all of these sorts of elements that go in within our organization that actually inhibit large scale transformation because we are good at what we do and therefore we care so much about this organization, we make sure it doesn't fall down. So that's a different driver when we're doing transformations and when we're thinking about how we move this organization forwards, because it's very, very precious to people, which is brilliant. We have high retention, which is excellent, but the technology landscape is changing very quickly. And the demands of the business, our contracted backlog, for example, is very, very high. So we have to make changes technologically, but also culturally, and also within our population to help people understand the changes that we're making. Ensure that we are working consistently with the new technology that we bring. Some of this we don't get a choice about. Some of it is baked into the system and that's how it should work, and because that's what we're paying for. And showing people the advantage of being able to speed up the standard process where necessary, but also where in some areas that are very, very specialised, submarines is a good example, there will be some differentiation, there will be some differences, but knowing where those are and how we build those in. So it's culturally dependent, I think, and driving data and technologies, AI into organisations. The success will be based on the culture of the organisation and the expectation of it. So it all comes back to people.
And Johanna, that matters a lot for me because I'm dealing with lots of different people in my team, autistic, different cultures, and having an open mind. When I talk to them, my God, the intelligence that comes out of them.
Yeah.
Even though like some of them, they may be autistic and they've got their discomforts, but I've learned how to phrase myself and how to behave with them to get the best out of them. So instead of like me going da-da-da-da, I know for some people that's really overwhelming. So I will them in a different way, and then you just the intelligence that comes out of them is just like, if I was like sitting here going, well, they're different, I'm not going to bother with that, I don't know how to communicate with them. You are not going to get anything done. You have to have that open mind with them, because they're such highly intelligent people who've got really, really good.
Yeah.
So you have that open mind. And it's
Completely.
fun.
And it's fun. It is very fun. I love working with neurodivergent people because it is so much fun. The ideas, the thought processes, the the innovation that comes out, is the creativity element of it is second to none.
And the humour. Yeah, it's just really good.
I think sometimes we forget of how diverse everybody truly is, because we're a global organisation, right? We bring so much wealth of knowledge from all the little different bits of us that actually differ from each other. And that's where we get our strength from, because it's how we learn. And I think as an organisation, we don't always get everything right in the terms of being completely inclusive, but we learn, and we do learn quite well. So the small things allow people to feel seen. So for me, it's working, especially in the LGBT space, little things like include pronouns in your emails, which we have as part of our global template for what our email signature should include. It's so important, but it goes down to like, how many people called Chris do we know? And then you get an email from someone called Chris. How do you know what gender they are?
Yeah.
And just having pronouns, it's so simple, but it makes people feel seen. It makes people feel, and that is so, so important for making people feel like they can actually thrive in this environment.
Yep.
And yeah, we do some things right. There's some things to work on, but it's definitely a nice environment to work in.
So every morning we have a stand up, and we are all of us take the time to ask each other how we are and how they're feeling, how's their morning been, and everything. And we understand that some people may have got personal issues going on in their life. You need to be so. We totally want to know about that so we can be aware of that and help and be understanding. And we do that just individually ourselves. We're not being told to do that because we're a bunch of people. He seems to hire such really nice, kind people, don't they? And I haven't met a horrible person yet. And so when we're on a stand-up, we ask each other how it is. And we know each other's personal issues, and we understand them. It helps me when they know what issues I've got in my personal life, and their understanding. I feel a lot more comfortable than during the day, going about doing my work, knowing that if I can't do this bit, they know what's going on in my personal life because I haven't got that bit done. So and
I love that because it lowers the hierarchy. And one of the things I think is really critical for technology teams, particularly, but I go further than that, is really being able to lower that hierarchy so that you can speak to people at different levels. And in many roles, it might be the most senior person who's got the greatest oversight of the organisation. Don't ever feel that's the case from a technology perspective. There are people at different grades, different levels, who've got different ideas, who know where the problems are, who can help you solve some of the challenges that are coming through, or who have got more experience from other organisations as to how you might go through a particular problem. But you can't access that unless, as we're saying, you give space to people, but also you lower that hierarchy. From my perspective, I'm always like, am I authentic? Can people approach me? Because I don't want to be so distant from it. I want to learn. I want to hear what people say and understand A, what the challenges are, but B, what some of the solutions are as well.
Yeah, it is. We had like example. We went up to Leeds earlier this week. We had like the head of engineering come in, just wander around and talk to us, and then impromptu he said, I know you having your team is having some like environment issues, these problems, and he goes, let's go in a room. Let's all go and sit in a room. You tell me, got the whiteboard. He goes like, tell me anything that you are concerned about, anything. So it gives me the opportunity to help you, he said. As in, if you've got environment issues, I will find a person that can help you fix that. And he just went off in the room and said, like, just tell me, be honest with me, whatever it is, whatever you need. And I thought, yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Fantastic. Look, I think, such an authentic view of BAE's culture is really coming out from all of your different points here. Really does highlight an incredibly warm, welcoming, inclusive culture, which is a great segue into our next section. So Johanna, maybe we start with you on this one, and then we'll kind of work our way around. But as a woman in tech, how have your experiences shaped how you think about inclusion, progression, and leadership within the industry more broadly? But then you can also touch on, what makes a workplace itself inclusive.
Yeah. So it's a real interesting point in time, I think. Some of my peers who are still in the sector or just retiring out will tell you about the time that they had coming into technology and how they were the only woman in the room for a lot of the time, and the glass ceilings they had to break and the challenges with it. And in some sectors and in some areas, that's essentially true. Sometimes I feel that I was in that next category down. I was following those women. There were people who'd made those changes, those moves. And so in many respects, it was easier for me. Is it easy? Is it equal? No, it's not. But some of the discussions that you see sort of online or people talk about in terms of the absolute challenges are not there. What I'm really aware of in the workforce is that we still have lower amounts of females in the workforce than men from a gender perspective. We are not hiring the amount of diversity that we need into the teams to ensure that those AI ethics are correct, to understand that the models are appropriate and these types of elements. That's certainly a concern. But also, if we are too skewed in one direction or another, because I think you can go too female heavy as well, or too neurodiverse heavy, or whatever it is, then actually you get an adverse effect as well. So it's really about a balance of the team. But in the terms of females in leadership, what you can often find is you stifle females progressing if you don't have enough people around them and they can't see the way through. So I know that some of it's a very big focus across digital data and cyber in terms of leadership for females. We have initiatives for each of them, and we bring them together as well. So I champion the Women in Data groups that we have, and we support people to come together with that. We also, in the UK, because it's such a challenge to keep females in the data industry, we have an industry brand for this as well called Women in Data, where with various initiatives and partnerships that are in place. But once a year, we get together at the O2, and this year there were 3,500 women in data that came from across the country. And the phenomenal thing there is the majority of them will wear red. So it is a sea of red of women who are all common in terms of their love for data, analytics, AI, the direction of travel they're going in, but all seeking to understand more some of the challenges that are inherent in with being a woman, in that we do have a little bit more imposter syndrome. We are a little bit hesitant to move forwards. Those of us who have young families or family pressures with children will make different decisions as to how we work and when we work, and that may have a negative impact. But the Women in Data movement actually focuses a lot on some of these challenges that are inherent for women. So last year we focused on women's health, and we talked about health over the different life stages that are often not addressed. So menopause has been a big topic of conversation in the press recently, but there's other aspects of that as well, in terms of just menstruation, in terms of being pregnant, after pregnancy, being exhausted for 10 years after that, what that stress and strain looks like as well. Caring responsibilities up and down. And this year's focus, the year before was about crime against women, and so the unprecedented amount of crime that we have against women, not just in our workforce but in society. Of course, our women are working on our sites and then getting to and from sites as well. And this year we talked about pensions, and we talked about the unspoken often challenges that women have with regard to ensuring that they have enough to retire, and what decisions they make in the workforce, whether they progress or not, and the impact that has on their families and on their futures. And I think women, we're very giving. We will make decisions that we think are best for the moment, that we think are best for those around us. But actually, there is a growing discussion that actually making decisions that are best for us are best for those that we care for and are around us as well. Because fundamentally, we support, whether in caring or finances, a range of individuals around us, and now across the generations as well. So it's a really topical one. It's a big subject area. It's one that we think about a lot internally. It's a challenge in defence, certainly a challenge being a woman in leadership, and also encouraging other women to lead in these environments. It takes a persistence and a resilience. I was chatting to another woman in defence from another area of the industry last night, and we spoke about how it's not just that you have to put your foot in the door to get in the door, but you have to repeatedly put your foot back in that door to remind them that you're coming into that room with them and you're doing that work with them, and you're going to be there, and what you say is important and must be baked in. I think the other thing that I say about having families is what I do find as well, that women who come back part-time are so incredibly focused. The value that they put back into the workforce is astonishing, because they're conscious of the sacrifices and the compromises they're making.
Yeah, that's
so,
a good
I do
point.
find that
Part-time is
the
happy
part-time
medium, isn't it?
part-time
That's
woman is
good.
a hugely valuable
Yeah, I
asset
think
that organisations need to
inclusion
focus
in
on much
how
more,
we
to
see
encourage, to
it's
support
really
them to go
interesting.
through that stage.
I
and then
sometimes think I
maybe
come from
the
it a
choice
slightly
to come back.
biased lens, because I'm so engrossed in how we react to the LGBT community
Emma.
as a business, because I form part of that network and part of that group. It's always been encouraging to see how many other groups we have, and how many other, we all call them labels, because we're all made up of all these little things, but how many others we recognize and we celebrate, and we look to make the workplace a little bit better for those. And it is really hard not to kind of get hung up on your own biases. So I find that I maybe don't see some of the sexist things as much as I do the things that are maybe slightly more homophobic. And it's a really interesting view to have. Occasionally pick up on, like at this workshop I was at, someone swore and then immediately apologized to me as the only woman in that small group. And I was like, you knew where I lived. Swearing is probably part of our everyday life, so you wouldn't apologize. You see those things, what you've come across in the past before. And I think one that really sticks in my mind is the previous company I worked for. I didn't have a great experience with coming out at work and how people perceived it. And I was very much told to stay in the closet for a chunk of that. And that was really difficult. It's really hard not to talk about your personal life. And I was on a call with someone who was American, and they were going on and on about how big a Trump supporter their family is. And I was like, he doesn't really like anyone who's LGBT. So maybe I shouldn't speak up in this one. I'll just stay quiet. And we had a series of calls. And at the start of every call, when everyone makes small talk, I think I panicked every single time. And I wasn't thinking about what the call was. And I wasn't prepping for what I was supposed to be doing. I was worrying if I was accidentally going to say something that was going to make it awkward or difficult. A few weeks down the line, it was Pride Month, and they were telling us about all the pride flags that they put up in the office and how they're going to celebrate it. And suddenly felt like I could breathe. And they hadn't done anything. They hadn't really said anything that was against me. But my preconceived notions of my own experiences actually held me back in that scenario. And I was on a call with people I knew who would have said something if something came up, but I just didn't want to create that situation. And sometimes it's really hard to get away from your own personal experiences and kind of drive past them. And I'm always conscious of, is that what sometimes can hold us back when we are looking to move forward or are looking to get involved in these conversations? Biases might stop us and make us not so comfortable.
And isn't that interesting? The one that I'm thinking to at the moment is anti-Semitism. So are we doing enough on that front? We will have a lot of Jewish people that work for us. We will know some of them. We won't know others. How do we sense check that? Because you're right, Emma. You live in your own bubble within your organisational structure.
Even within your
so
teams,
how do we
I know
assure
within our
from that
teams we've got
inclusivity perspective that
LGBT
we are able to consciously
in there
see
amongst
into
actually
some
quite
of
a
the
few.
other areas,
So
particular and
we
challenging
openly
times
talk about it.
in
You
our
want to
countries.
you want to be your natural self. You want to be who you are. You don't want to hide who you are. You want to feel comfortable with who you are. And that does mean you have to talk about these things, and it makes it more comfortable.
Absolutely. I think we're gonna round up with a bit of a discussion on AI. But before we do move on to that, Emma, I just wanted to come back to you on this. So I think we've the way the three of you kind of unpacked the issue there was really inspiring to sit there. I just sat back and listened in to people who have a lot more expertise on this area than myself. But I suppose focusing in on the how, like how do you go about creating an inclusive space? Like what are the actions you can take to try and create that inclusive culture?
There's kind of two levels. So you've got your high level where you have the organization's policies that kind of underpin what we want people to be able to do. So, and we have some really great ones. We've got like a work-life balance one, which is really amazing in that we spent a lot of time changing the language to make sure it's accessible to everyone. So making sure it's a little bit more gender neutral, so it includes everybody. And does it work for every scenario? I mean, it's not possible for it to work for every scenario, but we've done some real due diligence to kind of make it as accessible as we can in every way possible. And that goes a long way to allowing people to see themselves reflected, so they feel that they can access these policies and they can use them where they need to. But I think I referenced it before. It's the small things that affect people on a day-to-day basis. Having pronouns in your email signature, because it makes people feel seen instantly. Having how you pronounce your name in your email signature. You know, we're a global company. That's really important to also have something like that. It's as Davinder mentioned, the conversations around the office, right? Making sure that those conversations are open, allowing people to feel comfortable, but also accepting that no matter how accepting we might be, some people's own biases might not allow them to be open to those conversations, but they've got the opportunity there. We're so diverse that there's no way we can do something for absolutely everything. Like, we have rainbow lanyards. We can't do a lanyard for every single label out there. Like, we'd all have hundreds and it just wouldn't work. But in our actions, in the way we act, in the way we speak, in the language we use, we're able to create that environment and it flows down. You know, we've got lots of little microcosm environments. Like, you know, we've got the shipyard, and that's its own little environment, and people behave very differently there. So what would happen if you walked into an office? And some people work between those, and you kind of have to transition, and language changes as you work between them. The banter changes drastically as you work between them, and it's having that understanding as you do that.
Fantastic.
And the cultural differences as well. So that's the you know, the other elements. So we have the cultural differences when we travel. We have cultural differences within our own offices in the UK as well. So something about being open to being conscious about all of the different elements that are coming through. And I know we have a lot of internal comms on different areas and celebrations that are coming in. It's also being open to being corrected if something lands wrong, because often it's unintentional. If something lands wrong, or we missed something, or we didn't pay attention to X. So, you know, one of the elements is, do you eat online during Ramadan? I think that was a big one that we're talking through. Do you eat online during Ramadan? Do you take a drink online during Ramadan? You know, another one that comes up when I'm in Saudi. So as a senior member of staff in BAE Systems, generally, if I'm on site meeting someone, I would generally put my hand out and shake their hand. In Saudi, as a woman, I don't put my hand out. Whoever is around me will put their hand out first. It's their cultural approach to it. So I've got to be really conscious of, like, almost holding my hand back to shake hands when I'm there, because that's not their cultural norm. And it's all of these little things, isn't it? That we have to forgive each other when we
It's
and get it
important
wrong.
for
Go back
people to
round boy
feel
and be open to
comfortable,
those
because otherwise you're not
conversations.
going to
But
get the
having
best
that
out of them. People have got so
that
much
sort of
intelligence
wide
in them,
view
and the
of our
more
world
comfortable
currently
they feel,
today,
the
but
more
also how
likely
it's
that
changing,
intelligence doesn't come out of their head.
because it's changing quickly in
So
some
it's,
areas.
you know, it's productivity measured as well. Make somebody feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Yeah, look, I think fantastic to get all of your perspectives on these topics, and again, I think really speaks to the culture that has been built within BAE Systems, and I think something that's, you know, really been a running theme throughout this whole conversation, right? The diversity of the career paths and background diversity. You know, that brings benefits to the team, that diversity of different career paths companies brings, but then also, you know, the different perspectives and different characteristics within the team that again go to build a really well-rounded team. I feel like we could chat on this for hours, but I am conscious of time. We've got around 10 minutes left, and we are going to have to break the glass, push the big red button that says AI, which is obligatory in all podcasts these days. So Johanna, maybe we'll start with you. You know, AI is clearly becoming part of how everyone works. Where are you seeing the biggest opportunities, and what do organizations need to do to get it right when they adopt it?
Well, that was a big question to start off with, wasn't it? And I think, you know, if I take it at the highest level, I don't think we know yet. Is AI here? Yes, it's here. Does it have some advantages? Yes, it does. Do we know how and where to get those advantages? No, we don't. No, we don't. And I think, what's been really clear, certainly if you read the press and a lot of the articles that are going through, is the tech companies will tell us of the great advantages of this tooling. But there is no advantage to any tooling, AI is the same, if it's not used by the workforce or by the people that it's intended for. The only value that comes out of all of our systems, AI is the same, is if it's used. And the business change and the people element of it is fundamental to those sorts of adoptions and changing elements too. So, where we spoke earlier about business change, about transformations, the same challenges is there for AI. So that's, my first premise. Let's just take care in are we revolutionizing the world? Well, we may be, but not in 2026. The challenge from the sector this year, certainly when I speak to chief data officers across Europe, is that the challenge is putting AI into operations, so enabling it to be used by the majority to be able to drive those benefits through. So we've seen a lot of the generative AI capabilities from Genie to Claude to Copilot come through. Name your favorites. We're all busy looking at the differences between them, the advantages of them, and how each new update that comes from them changes and impact, rattles the market a little bit more. And of course, we've seen Anthropic releases just in the past couple of weeks that have done that again considerably. So we're in this world where things are changing quite dramatically. I expect that some of the technology that's coming out at the moment will collapse and not move forward. We always see that. We see an explosion of technology. If you saw my inbox, you'd see everybody telling me they have the AI solution that's going to save my day. Realistically, we're still in the foothills of understanding this. However, huge productivity gains, I think, that can come from this, and huge advantage in terms of pace and scale and the synthesis of large amounts of data. So real application across BAE Systems. We see the application of AI tooling in the precision of our work, that's speeding up the multi-domain integration elements, and looking at threat systems. We see it readily. We were publishing work this week on anti-threat detection, on automation and capabilities, and on multi-domain integration elements, for example. So, you see it readily. What does it mean in terms of our landscape? How do we build platforms with AI capability? What does it look like in terms of generative predictive maintenance, quality control, supply chains? All of those toolings have got to be built, they've got to be put into operations, they've got to be adopted. And fundamentally, the data that sits under them must be of an appropriate quality to get the output that you want from them. And, and this is where a lot of companies are falling down. They want the AI magic. They're not prepared to do the hard yards in terms of management and the governance of the data that underpins them. So we will see some successes as we go forwards in the next year or two. BAE Systems certainly will move in that direction and drive forwards in a productivity gains perspective and an understanding as to how that supports the transformation programs that we're
it's really
through,
interesting.
and
Really,
enhances the productivity.
I don't know if we can answer the where, when, and how, but I think
the ships,
as we do it, it's really important that
and the electronic
we're doing it for the right reasons. Like you said,
when,
kind
and
of sitting
how?
between
I don't know.
the business
Emma, have you got a
and
view?
IT, you get a really interesting view on people's thoughts around it, and it's really mixed. You've got the people who are really excited in what the possibilities are and where we can go, and you've got another group of people who are terrified it's going to take their jobs away from them. And it's about how do we market this correctly and show what the benefit is, how we're going to improve in that area. And yes, things will change. People are inherently terrified of change. But how do we bring people on that journey and show the progress we can make? And actually, their roles may change, but it's not disappearing. It's enhancing what they do, and it's adding to that. It's not taken away. And we have a real mix of people in the way they understand it, right? We've got people coming in, especially our grads, and people who love coding, who love getting into the nitty-gritty, who totally get AI and fully in there, utilizing it at home, and then get frustrated that it's not already everywhere and everything that we do. But we've also got people who've never even heard of it before. And we have these conversations in the office, and and when we bring it in, we have to find a way to level the playing field as we do it, and really kind of work out a way to bring people up to the level where they feel comfortable using it. They don't have to be experts, but they have to feel comfortable in using it. But also find a way that those people who do know how to use it, find a way to help them progress, to take it further. And it's a big gap. I don't think we have exact answers for it. We're working away creating different experiential learnings, looking at how we can do this. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be something that continually develops because technology doesn't stand still. So we can't stand still in the way we do it either.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, very,
Well,
very well
and
said.
indeed, the rate of
It's
Davinder,
change in the
before we come to
technology
you, just
landscape is
to wrap us
exponential
up on
because of
AI, Emma, I
AI,
know you've got
and
a hard
then
stop and
because
got
of
to jump. So just
quantum
wanted to
time
take the
behind
opportunity
it.
to
We've
thank you
got
so much
to
for joining
really
us
think
today.
through
It's been
how we
incredible to have you
transform
on
our
and
organizations as we go
to hear
forward.
and share all your insights. Thanks.
okay, thanks.
Awesome. And yeah, Davinder, let's come to you on AI. Let's take us out.
Well, this is it. I not being afraid of it, definitely using it, and I want to use it for my code a little bit. Yesterday I asked it that I wanted to do this specific thing that I wanted it to do and map it to a class. It gave me it, and it was quite complicated but quite sexy as well. And I thought that's what I'm going to do. Overnight, I looked at this. I thought if somebody comes along to try to fix this or try and amend it, it's not going to work, and it's going to take them longer to do it. It's not good. So I decided to tear all that down. And this morning I asked it in a different way to give me a different solution that's a lot simpler. So that now I'm going to be using that simpler solution. So in the end, it will give you whatever you ask it. But is it the right thing? Just because it gave me this sexy code and it was brilliant and it did everything in one go, but that's not good for ultimately down the line, having everything in one go in that little circle is not good for future maintenance. So I thought, no, it needs to be brought out and made it simpler. So I just asked it a different question and it gave me in little chunks. So it can be dangerous, but it is. Mm, yeah.
Yeah. So be curious. But there's being curious, isn't there? And there's really understanding the outcome that comes from it and checking yourself what you want that outcome to be. I heard a brilliant presentation yesterday from some academic colleagues who were talking about the use of AI in cyber space to be able to detect vulnerabilities faster in systems. So national security perspective, huge advantage, and working with the tech companies so that the new code that's coming out from some of the new models only goes to friendly foe to be able to find the vulnerabilities rather than going into the wild, where it actually could be used against some of the national infrastructure elements as well. So the other element of this is the regulation around it, is the understanding of what the tools can do. So some of the new tools that are coming out, as Davinder was saying, we don't know necessarily what the power is of what they can do and what the outcomes will be. And as Emma is focusing on the ethics side of it, she's thinking about what that means from an internal perspective from BAE Systems and how we drive those forwards. So I think it just goes back to, we're in the foothills. We're adopting, we're addressing, we're in there. But, as
Well, this is it,
Davinder was just
because
giving a
some of
brilliant
the
example of,
less
we've got to
experienced
remain
junior
really
ones, and I've
cautious,
seen them use it.
really
You can tell they've used it,
curious,
and it's gone into into the
really
environment. I'm
conscious
thinking, well, this is
of
why
what
we
it
have
is
code
that
reviews
we're
as
doing
well. But
as we drive
that's the
forwards.
time to think. Just because you got it from here, the robot said do this. I'm not it really shouldn't have gone in. And it made me think, I'm thinking, did they even know what they were putting in here? But then we've got checks and balances like code reviews and PR reviews anyway against that. So that's where the human element comes on it. So there's always two people that have to look at your work before it gets submitted anyway. So that's a huge side of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Something we did when we started to adopt AI is actually we got our team to work on a set of guidelines, like set up MDs. What sort of tests should we be running? What sort of tech stack should we be using? So rather than just letting a Claude or a ChatGPT make all of these tech decisions and decide which tests are, and actually getting the experts in first to create the framework, the guidelines, which you use as part of setting up any project. So then it's a really interesting way of looking at how, human expertise and AI will collaborate in future, and really, I think, highlights the need for, Davinder, your skill set, and Johanna, and all of you with, your fantastic technical experience to then be helping others to leverage AI in the right way and get things right versus just letting it go ad lib. Awesome. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us today. Obviously, thank you so much to Emma as well, who's had to jump off now. Anna, thank you for joining us. You've been a great guest, and Davinder as well. Thank you so much for being with us. And there we have it, another fantastic episode of the DevLab podcast. Thanks as always to our partner BAE Systems, as well as our three fantastic speakers, Emma, Johanna and Davinder. It's been another great episode. I'm sure you've enjoyed it out there as much as I have recording it. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.